No one inside that corporate building paid attention to the janitor. Not the employees rushing past with coffee in their hands. Not the managers staring at their phones. And certainly not the powerful CEO who believed the world existed to serve him. To everyone else, the man pushing the cleaning cart was invisible. He wore a faded gray uniform. His boots were scuffed. His head slightly lowered as he wiped fingerprints from glass doors that would be dirty again within minutes. Another cleaner. Another nobody. But what no one realized was this. That quiet janitor wasn't there by accident. And the man who was about to humiliate him was moments away from destroying his own career. It started like any other morning. The office lobby buzzed with movement. Elevators chimed. Phones rang. Screens flashed numbers worth millions of dollars. Then the CEO stepped out of the elevator. Expensive suit. Polished shoes. Confident stride. People straightened their posture instantly. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Smiles appeared out of fear, not respect. This man controlled salaries, promotions, futures. As he walked across the marble floor, the janitor's mop accidentally brushed against his designer shoe. It wasn't hard. It barely left a mark. But the CEO stopped walking. Slowly. The entire lobby felt the temperature change. He looked down at his shoe, then up at the janitor. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped loudly. The janitor froze. "I'm sorry, sir," he said calmly. "I'll clean it right away." The CEO laughed. Not a normal laugh. The kind meant to embarrass. "You people are always in the way," he said, his voice echoing through the lobby. "Do you even understand where you are?" Employees stopped pretending not to listen. The janitor bent down, wiping the shoe carefully. That's when the CEO decided humiliation wasn't enough. "Look at you," he continued. "Cleaning floors at your age. Is this really all you're capable of?" A few people shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. The janitor slowly stood up. He didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. Didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the CEO, calm, unreadable. As he reached for his mop handle, the sleeve of his uniform slid back slightly. For just 1 second, a dark tattoo appeared on his forearm. Sharp lines. Military precision. Familiar to anyone who had seen it before. One woman near the elevator gasped quietly, because she recognized that symbol. And suddenly, the man everyone thought was a nobody was no longer invisible. The lobby slowly returned to motion. Elevators resumed their steady rhythm. Shoes tapped against marble. Conversations restarted in cautious whispers. But something had changed. The janitor returned to his work without a word. He pushed his cart toward the far end of the hall, wiping glass panels and collecting trash as if nothing unusual had happened. To everyone else, it was easier to pretend they hadn't seen anything. That's how the building functioned. Executives were noticed. Managers were respected. Workers like him were meant to blend into the background. Above the lobby, the company's headquarters buzzed with authority. 40 floors of glass and steel, home to one of the most powerful corporations in the city. Inside the executive wing, the atmosphere was entirely different. Long conference tables. Digital screens. Stock charts glowing like constellations on the walls. People spoke carefully here, choosing every word as if it could cost them their job. At the top of it all sat the CEO, Richard Hale. To the outside world, he was a visionary. To his employees, he was unpredictable. Some days he offered bonuses and praise. Other days, he fired people over minor mistakes. No one ever knew which version of him would walk through the door. That morning, he was already in a foul mood. A deal in Tokyo had stalled overnight. Investors were demanding explanations. His phone vibrated endlessly with alerts. He loosened his tie and muttered to himself as he stormed down the corridor. And that's when he saw the janitor again. The man was cleaning near the executive offices, a place normally restricted to upper management. Hale frowned. "Why is he here?" he asked sharply. An assistant whispered, "Maintenance schedule, sir." Hale scoffed. "They'll let anyone wander in now." The janitor didn't look up. He moved slowly, methodically, every motion calm, controlled. As Hale passed, he glanced again at the man's forearm. The tattoo was gone beneath the sleeve. For a moment, something tugged at the CEO's memory, a faint recognition he couldn't place. He dismissed it. People like that didn't belong to his world. Hours passed. Meetings stacked on top of meetings. Tension thickened the air. Around noon, an emergency board briefing was called. Executives filled the conference room. Coffee cups trembled slightly in nervous hands. Outside, the janitor quietly emptied trash bins near the glass wall. Inside, voices rose. "We're losing internal trust," one board member said. "Our employee turnover has doubled," another added. Hale slammed his hand on the table. "They're replaceable," he snapped. "Everyone is." Silence followed. No one challenged him. Not because they agreed, but because fear had replaced respect long ago. During a pause in the meeting, Hale stepped outside for air. The janitor stood only a few feet away, mopping the floor. The CEO stopped again. "You," he said sharply. "Didn't I see you downstairs earlier?" "Yes, sir," the man replied calmly. Hale studied him more closely this time. The posture wasn't slouched like the others. The eyes weren't dull. There was something disciplined about him. "You ever worked anywhere else?" Hale asked mockingly. "Yes," the janitor answered. "Doing what?" Hale smirked. "Leadership," the man replied simply. A few executives nearby chuckled quietly. Hale laughed out loud. "Leadership," he repeated. "From a mop." The janitor met his eyes. "Titles don't define leadership," he said evenly. "Character does." The laughter stopped. Hale's smile tightened. "Careful," he warned. "People lose their jobs for talking like that." The janitor nodded politely. "I understand." As he turned away, his sleeve slipped again. The tattoo reappeared, clearer this time. A symbol once worn by elite warriors. A mark recognized by military instructors and legends. Across the glass wall, one executive stared, his face draining of color. Because now he knew. The janitor wasn't pretending to be calm. He was trained to be. By mid-afternoon, the building felt heavier. Not because of the workload, but because everyone could sense the CEO's mood turning darker by the hour. Richard Hale hated being questioned. And that morning, the board meeting had done exactly that. He walked through the executive floor like a storm searching for something to break. Employees avoided eye contact. Assistants pressed themselves against the walls. Even managers lowered their voices as he passed. Then he saw the janitor again. The man was quietly replacing trash liners near the open workspace, moving with the same calm precision as before. Something about that calm irritated Hale. Most people flinched around him. This man didn't. Hale stopped abruptly. "Hey," he snapped. "Did I tell you to clean here?" The janitor looked up. "Yes, sir. It's on today's schedule." Hale scoffed loudly. "Schedule," he said. "You people hide behind schedules because you don't think." A few employees nearby froze at their desks. The janitor remained respectful. "I'll move if this area is inconvenient." That response only made things worse. Hale stepped closer. "No," he said sharply. "Stay. I want everyone to see something." Heads slowly lifted from computer screens. Phones stopped typing. The CEO's voice grew louder. "This," he said, pointing, "is what happens when people aim low their entire lives." The janitor said nothing. Hale continued. "You spend decades cleaning up after others," he sneered. "No ambition. No influence. No future." A few workers shifted uncomfortably. One young employee clenched her fists beneath the desk. Still, no one spoke. The janitor finally replied, calmly. "Everyone serves in different ways, sir." Hale laughed again, louder than before. "Serve," he mocked. "You're not serving. You're surviving." He grabbed a nearby cup of coffee from an employee's desk. "Clean this," he ordered, spilling it intentionally onto the floor. Gasps rippled through the room. The janitor stared at the mess for a moment. Then he knelt down and began wiping it without complaint. Audience question. Backhand index pointing right at this moment. Would you have spoken up or stayed quiet to protect your job? The humiliation wasn't accidental anymore. It was deliberate. Hale crossed his arms. Look at that, he said. Know your place and life gets easier. The janitor finished cleaning and stood up slowly. Not angry. Not ashamed. Just steady. I believe respect is more important than position, he said. The CEO's smile vanished. Respect. Hale snapped. You earn respect with power, not with a mop. The janitor met his eyes. Power without character never lasts. The room went silent. Everyone felt it. Hale's face reddened. You think you're wise, he said coldly. I can have you removed from this floor in 10 seconds. I know, the janitor replied. That calm again. Unmoved. Unafraid. Audience question. Backhand index pointing right. Why do you think calm confidence scares arrogant people so much? Hale turned to security. Get him out of here, he barked. Effective immediately. 2 guards hesitated. The janitor didn't resist. Didn't argue. As he lifted his cleaning cart handle, his sleeve rolled back, farther this time. The tattoo was fully visible. Dark ink. Sharp edges. A symbol burned into muscle through discipline, not decoration. One of the guards froze. His eyes widened. Because he recognized that mark. And suddenly, the humiliation stopped feeling safe. The CEO hadn't embarrassed a nobody. He had just challenged the wrong man. If no one knew your name or your status, would your character still be the same? The entire floor went quiet. Not the comfortable kind of silence. The kind that presses against your ears. 2 security guards stood frozen beside the janitor. One of them, the younger one, stared openly at the tattoo now visible on the man's forearm. His mouth parted slightly. His grip on the radio loosened. The older guard noticed. What is it? He whispered. The younger man swallowed. That mark, he said softly. I've seen it before. The CEO scoffed from behind them. Oh, please, Richard Hale snapped. It's ink. That's all. Do your job. The younger guard hesitated. That's not just a tattoo, sir. Hale stepped forward, irritation flashing in his eyes. Since when do janitors scare security? The janitor slowly pulled his sleeve back down. There's no need for this, he said calmly. I'll leave. But the tension didn't fade. If anything, it grew heavier. Employees leaned closer to their screens, pretending to work while watching every reflection in the glass. Whispers passed like electricity. Did you see that symbol? Why did security freeze? Something's wrong. Hale pointed toward the elevator. Out. Now. The janitor nodded respectfully and began pushing his cart forward. But before he could take 2 steps, the younger guard spoke again. Sir, may I ask your name? The janitor stopped. Slowly, he turned. Why does it matter? Hale barked. The guard ignored him. The janitor considered the question for a moment. Steven, he answered quietly. Just one word. Steven. A strange ripple moved through the room. The name itself didn't shock them. But the way he said it did. Not defensive. Not nervous. Grounded. Certain. Hale laughed sharply. Steven the janitor, he mocked. Great. Now move. Steven looked at him, not with anger, but with something deeper. Disappointment. The guards exchanged a glance. The older one frowned. Steven, what? He asked carefully. Steven paused. Then answered. Seagal. The room inhaled. A few people laughed, unsure. Others stared. Someone whispered, No way. Hale burst into laughter. Don't insult me, he said. You expect us to believe that? Steven didn't reply. He simply lifted his sleeve again, fully this time. The tattoo was unmistakable now. Aikido lineage markings. Military instructor insignia. A symbol known in elite circles worldwide. One executive's chair scraped loudly as he stood. No, the man whispered. His face had gone pale. I've seen that mark, he said. In Japan. Another employee murmured, my uncle trained under him. Phones appeared. Hands shook. Hale's laughter died mid-breath. What is happening? He demanded. The older guard cleared his throat. Sir, if this is who I think it is. Steven finally spoke again. I didn't come here to be recognized. The words were calm, but carried weight. I came because this company was reporting serious internal complaints. The room erupted. Complaints? From who? About what? Steven's eyes moved slowly across the office. Workplace intimidation. Public humiliation. Abuse of authority. Every word struck like a hammer. Hale's jaw tightened. You expect us to believe a movie star is scrubbing floors? Steven met his gaze. Power reveals who people really are when they think no one important is watching. The younger guard straightened instinctively, like a soldier recognizing a superior. I served in the Marines, he said quietly. I trained under one of your students. Steven nodded respectfully. Hale took a step back. This is ridiculous, he snapped. Security, escort him out. No one moved. The guards didn't respond. For the first time since becoming CEO, Richard Hale stood powerless in his own building. Steven turned toward the employees. How many of you have been spoken to like this? He asked. No one answered. Then one hand lifted. Then another. Then half the room. A silence heavier than shouting followed. Steven nodded slowly. I thought so. Hale's voice cracked. You can't do this, he said. I built this company. Steven replied calmly. No. People built it. You just forgot that. HR executives rushed onto the floor, alerted by the disturbance. Board members joined the call remotely. The atmosphere shifted, completely. Where Hale once commanded fear, now he stood isolated. Steven faced him one final time. You judged a man by his uniform, he said, and revealed your own character. Security finally spoke. Sir, we've been instructed to escort you to the conference room. Hale's eyes widened. What? For an emergency review. The janitor's cart stood abandoned beside the wall. Steven adjusted his sleeve. The tattoo disappeared again. But its impact remained burned into every mind in the room. Because in one afternoon, the most powerful man in the building had become the smallest. The conference room felt colder than the rest of the building. Not because of the air conditioning, but because fear had replaced authority. Richard Hale sat at the long glass table for the first time in years without confidence. His expensive suit no longer looked powerful. His voice no longer controlled the room. Across from him sat the board members, faces sharp on the video screens. And standing calmly near the wall was the man he had humiliated only hours earlier. Steven Seagal. No mop. No cart. No uniform. Just presence. The chairman spoke first. Mr. Hale, he said, we've received over 40 formal complaints against you in the last 18 months. Hale scoffed weakly. Anonymous nonsense, he snapped. Steven stepped forward. They weren't anonymous, he said. They were ignored. A remote screen lit up. Employee testimonies appeared one by one. Public insults. Threats. Forced resignations. Fear-based leadership. Every incident documented. Every pattern undeniable. Hale's jaw tightened. This is a witch hunt, he said. Steven met his eyes calmly. No, he replied. It's accountability. The chairman turned toward Steven. Please explain why you were undercover. Steven nodded. I've spent years teaching discipline, he said. Not fighting, control. He paused. When complaints reached the board, they wanted reports. I wanted truth. So I asked for permission to observe the company from the lowest position. The room went silent. I wanted to see how leadership behaves when they think no one important is watching. One board member exhaled slowly. And what did you find? Steven looked directly at Hale. A man who confuses fear with respect. Hale slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. I increased profits by 30%. Steven responded quietly. At the cost of human dignity. The chairman raised his hand. Enough. He looked back at the screen. Mr. Hale, effective immediately, you are suspended pending termination review. Hale stood abruptly. You can't do this. Security appeared at the door. Not the same guards from earlier. These were corporate compliance officers. Steven didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. He simply watched. Hale's voice cracked. You humiliated me, he spat. Steven answered softly. No. You humiliated yourself. The doors closed behind the former CEO. A silence followed, then relief. Employees outside the conference room whispered in disbelief. Some wiped tears. Others stared at Steven like he wasn't real. Later that afternoon, the company gathered in the main auditorium. Steven stood at the podium. Not as an actor. Not as a legend. But as a man. I didn't wear a suit today, he began. I wore a janitor's uniform. A murmur spread. And in that uniform, he continued, I learned more about this company in one day than any report could show me. He looked across the crowd. People ignored me. Spoke over me. Belittled me. Then he paused. And some of you showed kindness. A few employees lowered their heads. Steven smiled gently. Those moments mattered. He straightened. Respect is not something you give upward. It's something you owe everyone. The board announced new leadership reforms. Anonymous reporting. Zero-tolerance humiliation policy. Mandatory leadership training. But the real lesson wasn't written in policy. It was written in memory. Because that day taught something unforgettable. You never know who someone truly is. And more importantly, you don't need to know to treat them with dignity. Steven finished with one final sentence. Power doesn't make you important. How you treat the powerless does. The audience stood. Not in fear. In respect. The building felt different the next morning. Not quieter. Lighter. The same marble floors reflected sunlight. The same elevators chimed. The same desks filled with glowing screens. But something invisible had shifted. For the first time in years, employees walked without fear tightening their shoulders. Whispers were gone. Forced smiles disappeared. People greeted each other without glancing over their backs. The man who once ruled the building through intimidation was gone. And in his place remained a lesson no training manual could ever teach. Steven Seagal arrived early. No janitor's uniform this time. He wore simple black clothing, no logos, no status symbols. Just presence. As he walked through the lobby, people noticed him immediately. Some nodded respectfully. Some smiled. Some simply watched in silence. But Steven raised a hand gently. Please, he said. Don't treat me differently. The words confused a few employees. I wasn't testing how you treat famous people, he continued. I was testing how you treat people you believe don't matter. That sentence stayed with them. Throughout the day, Steven met with teams across every floor. Not in conference rooms, but in break areas. He listened. Really listened. Stories poured out. A mother afraid to request time off. A junior analyst humiliated during meetings. A cleaner who had worked there 10 years without anyone knowing his name. Steven didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He simply wrote everything down. By afternoon, changes were already happening. Managers were reassigned. Departments reorganized. Anonymous reporting channels activated. But Steven knew something deeper still needed healing. So before leaving, he asked the board to gather everyone once more. The auditorium filled again. Steven stood at the front, not above them, but among them. I want to tell you something important, he said. When I cleaned your floors, no one knew who I was. A soft murmur spread. And yet, he continued, that was the most honest version of your workplace. He paused. Because character doesn't appear when cameras are on. It appears when we believe no one is watching. He looked across the room slowly. How you treat someone who can do nothing for you, that's who you really are. Silence wrapped the hall. Steven told them what few expected. I won't be joining the board. I won't take a leadership role. Surprised expressions spread. My job was never to take power, he said. It was to remind you what power is for. Before leaving, he walked toward the back rows. Toward the cleaning staff. He shook every hand. Learned every name. Some employees wiped tears. Because for the first time, someone important had seen them. As Steven reached the exit, a young intern spoke nervously. Sir, why did you choose to come like this? Steven turned. Because respect given only to titles isn't respect, he replied. It's fear wearing good manners. He stepped outside into the sunlight. The doors closed behind him. Weeks later, the company's reputation began to change. Employee satisfaction rose. Productivity improved. Turnover dropped. But more than numbers changed. People held doors open. Managers listened before speaking. Executives walked the floors instead of ruling from glass towers. The janitors were no longer invisible. And somewhere in that building, a simple sentence was framed on the wall. You don't need to know who someone is to treat them like they matter. Have you ever seen someone humiliated at work while everyone else stayed silent? By the time the sun set over the city skyline, the story of the janitor-turned-legend had spread far beyond the glass walls of the corporate headquarters. No one could believe what had happened. Not because a CEO had been suspended. Not because a janitor had revealed a tattoo. But because everyone realized how easily power could blind someone to reality, and how respect could restore it. Social media erupted. Videos of the confrontation went viral. Clips showed Richard Hale's arrogance, the silent composure of Steven Seagal, and the moment the tattoo revealed his identity. Comments poured in, shock, admiration, and reflection. This is how leaders should behave. I've never respected someone so much for staying calm. Imagine realizing you judged someone by their uniform, not their heart. It wasn't the spectacle that resonated. It was the lesson. People shared it in offices, schools, and homes. It became a story about dignity, humility, and strength without violence. Inside the company, life had changed. Managers who once barked orders now listened. Executives who thrived on fear began walking the floor. Employees, once invisible, now had voices that mattered. Even months later, new hires were told the story on their first day. Respect isn't for the powerful, HR would say. It's for everyone. And you never know who might be watching. For Steven, there were no interviews, no fanfare. He didn't seek credit. He didn't ask for praise. He simply walked through the halls one last time, nodding at faces he now recognized. A young intern approached him quietly. Sir, why did you do all this? Steven smiled faintly. Because power isn't about being seen, he said. It's about making sure no one is invisible. The lesson was simple, and yet profound. The CEO had learned it too, though painfully. Humiliation, once his tool, had become his teacher. By the end of the week, news outlets reported on the incident. It became more than a corporate story. It became a viral reminder of human dignity. People everywhere began asking themselves uncomfortable questions. How often do I judge someone by what I see? How often do I forget that everyone has value? What would I do if I were the one being overlooked? Audience question, comment driver. Backhand index pointing right. If you were in that office that day, would you have stood up for the janitor, or looked away like everyone else? Every share, every comment, every discussion reinforced the core message. Respect is powerful, but often invisible. Weeks later, Steven returned to his life quietly, leaving the company in capable hands. The janitors were now treated with the dignity they deserved. Employees felt safer. And Richard Hale? He became a cautionary tale. A man who had believed power could shield him from consequences, only to find that humility, discipline, and silent strength were far more commanding. The final lesson echoed far beyond the building. The strongest person in the room is not the one shouting the loudest. It's the one who can protect, guide, and correct, without losing control. And that night, when the city lights reflected off the glass towers, a quiet truth lingered. Some moments change lives, not through violence, not through spectacle, but through calm, decisive action that leaves an unforgettable impression. The story of the janitor and the tattoo became more than just a viral clip. It became a mirror for society, a reminder that courage, discipline, and respect cost nothing, but can change everything. Because in the end, everyone wants to be seen. And everyone deserves to be treated with dignity.